strategic plan.
If you give it a strategic plan, how much you want to write up on?
No, write up anything to what you're launching because we're going on air now. Kimbia,
So just give me the strategic.
Kimbia nayo. Just the booklet. Yeah, yeah. So because they paid for it, it would be nice to just mention it. We're on live TV.
You can both be looking at it.
Good morning, welcome to NTV Today. My name is Hudayfa Ad and we are live from the KICC grounds where a lot of activities really is happening as the Capital Markets Authority tries to launch the strategic plan for 2018. The president is expected here. Many industry players are here and CEOs and chairmen of the top companies in the country. We'll be speaking about a number of things really to understand how the country, the state of the country's economy really. But right now I'm joined by Pradeep Purana, who's the CEO of Athi River Mining, to speak and understand a bit about manufacturing, which is one of the key pillars of President Uhuru Kenyatta's Big Four agenda as he, of course, looks at ending the second term of his presidency. Mr. Pradeep, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Maybe you make us understand really what is the role of Athi River Mining and your position as Pradeep Purana in this the launch of the Capital Markets Authority's 5-year strategic plan.
Of course, there are hundreds of CEOs and players in the capital markets, stockbrokers, financial analysts, fund managers, and so on. I am one of the many listed companies on the Nairobi Securities Exchange, and my role here is to understand what Capital Markets Authority is presenting today in its strategic plan going forward for the next 5 years.
Even as you look at that, maybe you would make us understand a bit about your position as the CEO of Athi River Mining and Big Four agenda, manufacturing specifically. What is your role and how are you collaborating with both government and the private sector to maybe enable the government to achieve the GDP growth that they expect from the manufacturing sector?
All manufacturing industries contribute to job creation and to wealth creation in the economy. Today, manufacturing in Kenya is less than 15% of the GDP. We are a really diversified economy. But all over the world, manufacturing industry is what creates jobs, and this is what we need in the country most. We need to accelerate job creation through manufacturing and through agriculture and through housing and through healthcare. These are the four big agenda of President Uhuru Kenyatta's second term. And as a manufacturing sector, our job is to ensure that we give the right policy advice to the government to what will enable us to create more jobs and to accelerate manufacturing in this country.
Maybe then you'd want to mention really where we are. Manufacturing, you remember, has stagnated at 9 to 10% for the past 8, 10 years. And we are talking about a medium-term contribution of 15% and long-term contribution of almost 20% to the GDP. What are the key strategic steps that you're taking as players really to enable the government to achieve this?
Kenya Association of Manufacturers has been working very closely with the government in devising policies that will accelerate manufacturing sector in this country. One of the key areas that needs to be tackled is illicit trade and the supply chain of goods that come into the country without paying proper duties, without meeting the standards, and plainly counterfeit goods which upset the local manufacturing, and which disadvantage local manufacturing who go through the regulations and the compliances, which illicit trade does not. So that is one area which we really need to tackle, and at the moment the government has done a great job in setting up an interagency illicit trade initiative to make sure that we allow local manufacturers an, a level playing field against goods which are not meeting the same standards.
You've mentioned a number of things really in terms of maybe taxation and counterfeit goods hurting the manufacturing sector. But let me actually re-mention again taxation policy. How is this directly affecting your output as the manufacturing sector? And what conversations are you having with the government in terms of maybe lowering taxation so that you have enough incentives to produce locally for the market, locally and even regionally and internationally?
I think on the taxation policy there are many areas that can be advantageous to the manufacturing sector. If we create policies particularly for the export promotion, export industries that are exporting already have a series of benefits from a tax point of view. There are benefits of locating manufacturing industry in special economic zones now. So corporate listed companies which have a special tax rate for the first few years when listing on the Nairobi Stock Exchange. These are some of the advantages, and there are many others which can benefit and attract more industries into Kenya.
Then again, you briefly want to mention in terms of what do you call it, the incentives that you've received so far as a manufacturing sector. Are you really satisfied with it, or what are you asking the government to help you in terms of maybe incentivizing this sector so that we have 15 to 20% growth rate contribution?
One of the biggest job creation sectors of manufacturing industry is textile industry. There are very specific interventions that the government can make in allowing more job creation. In Ethiopia, for example, we have special economic zones which not only subsidize the manufacturers, but also provide incentives for manufacturers to employ more people in these sectors. We need to create and copy some of those policies under the special economic zones that'll boost the sector. The other sectors are leather and textiles, local procurement policies from the government, very key to promote local manufacturing. Furniture, Kenya used to employ more than 50,000 people in the furniture manufacturing sector until about 10 years ago. We have to revive that sector by promoting local procurement, and that can easily be done as one of the incentive packages.
Shall we then again speak about maybe how second-hand clothing and even second-hand cars are impacting the textile industry locally, and even manufacturing, assembling these cars locally? You remember a number of car assemblers, maybe they be Volkswagen, may they be Peugeot, are coming to set up shops locally so that they can be able, they see this as an entry into the expansive East African region with 180 million population. How then again does maybe second-hand vehicles and second-hand clothes hurt the textile industry and the motor vehicle industry?
I think the argument should be, are we able to compete at a price level with that is affordable by the masses? Are we able to manufacture cars or textiles at an economic level? There's a catch-22 situation. We need the markets and a level playing field for investment to happen at a scale where we can bring down the costs. Today, we have second-hand cars and second-hand clothing which distort the market, which do not allow manufacturing sector to scale up. So it's a difficult situation, but some difficult decisions have to be made by the government to allow manufacturers to have the confidence to invest and to scale up.
Then, as in your position really as the chairman of the anti-counterfeit agency some few years ago, you must have done a number of steps to ensure that the Kenyan market is not flooded by counterfeit goods. You remember the sugar really circus around mercury, importation of sugar that contained mercury and whatnot, and even generally counterfeit and how it's hurting local manufacturers in terms of even competition in the general economy. You'd also remember that a lot of imports that are coming in from the Asian markets are hurting in a big way the Kenyan manufacturers. What do you say about that?
So my term as chairman of anti-counterfeit agency has just expired. Flora Mutai, who was my successor as chair of Kenya Association of Manufacturers, is now the new chair of anti-counterfeit agency. What I managed to achieve in the last couple of years was to bring together all the government agencies into one body that is now tackling illicit trade and anti-counterfeit. and the standards. So this new organization under the Office of the President is headed by Mr. Mushamu, Wanyama Mushambu, and it is very, very effective, as you've seen in the last few weeks, in stopping illicit trade, goods which are substandard, goods which are not have paid the right duties, and this is going to create, inspire confidence in local manufacturers. As I've said, we need a level playing field, and this is what the interagency body is doing.
Do you think then the anti-counterfeit agency and the government generally has played its role in terms of ensuring that counterfeit goods do not really make it to the Kenyan market and even distort the Kenyan market generally?
This is a supply chain that has to be stopped. There are many interventions at our borders, at the port, at the airports, and it is going to take time. It's not an easy task, but we now have the commitment from the government, from the president himself, to make sure that illicit trade stops in this country. So I'm really glad that that is happening now.
Shall we shift gears a bit and talk about the cost of electricity and cost of doing business, cost of production generally? And as one of the biggest consumers of electricity, do you think that the government has done enough to ensure that these prices are good enough for you people as manufacturers in terms of maybe enabling you to produce these goods at competitive rates in the market?
I think manufacturers will always complain about the cost of electricity no matter what it is. What is important is reliability, supply, and making sure that electricity is a part of the understanding that electricity is part of the total cost chain, not just the only cost that affects final cost of goods. I think we're generally satisfied with the direction of the government. There has to be efficiencies in Kenya Power Lighting and in the distribution, and we have to reduce the wastage from the generation to the availability of power to the consumers. Today, Kenya wastes nearly 17 or 18% of the electricity produced. We need to bring in efficiencies in that area. We need to bring in efficiencies in the service that is provided by Kenya Power, and that will automatically see a reduction in the cost.
Reliability, you mentioned reliability, and then you remember the president last year had mentioned, around December last year, had mentioned that they would reduce the taxes, the cost of power for manufacturers especially, so that they can employ more people during the off-peak hours. How have you benefited from this policy, and how many people has the Athi River Mining Company maybe so far been able to employ to work during the off-peak hours?
I think the government's intention was to use electricity that is available in the night time, because the peak load is generally between 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. when households are all lit up, are cooking and using a lot of electricity. At night time there is surplus electricity which then the manufacturers can tap into. But there was a second reason as well, to create a 24-hour economy so that we have safety in our industrial areas, we have safety in all our manufacturing locations, and we can run our plants day and night. And those who choose to run at night benefit from this reduced power cost. In my company, because we are running 24/7 anyway at full capacity, unfortunately there's not much of a saving. But those industries which can afford to now open a second shift or a third shift will benefit tremendously.
Let's then again speak about something that has happened over the past 2 years. The reduction, the capping of interest rates that happened in 2016. It has in a big way affected the SMEs, really. It has affected households, and to an extent it has also affected manufacturers. How has it affected Athi River Mining, if you would want to mention?
Well, first of all, interest rate caps have reduced credit to the SMEs. And SMEs' buying power has been reduced for manufacturers like ours, so it has affected us as well. I think it is important to recognize that the markets must be able to price in the risk and be able to give credit at the right cost to all the sectors, not just the big players, but also to the SMEs.
So do you think, to an extent, beyond affecting the value chain, has it directly impacted the Athi River Mining Company?
Certainly. What has happened is the base 14% has become the norm. good credit, companies with good credit were able to borrow at a much lower rates, but everybody's now at a higher rate. And then the ones that are SMEs have been crowded out altogether. So it's not been an effective instrument of policy for the government as far as increasing trade and business and manufacturing in this country is concerned.
I can read from your argument that you, in a way, are advocating for the removal of this rate so that we can have a market-based regulation.
I think what is important is to have less regulation, but to ensure that there's more competition in our banking sector, and that is the key to pricing our interest rates to the manufacturing sector, to the SMEs at the right price.
So what would be your advice really be if you were speaking now to a banker, say a CEO of one of the leading Kenyan commercial banks, or even the government really, in terms of maybe ensuring that there is competition in the banking sector?
I think you're putting me on a spot. The banking sector is really advanced in this country. The financial markets are mature, and as you can see inside, the Capital Markets Authority is creating more products to enable capital to move to the right users at the right price. I think that is more important, to create markets where capital can move to those who need it and those who can afford the risk.
Finally, as we try to wind up the conversation around what is happening generally around manufacturing, you remember that we have our elections after every 5 years, and it's quite heated. This really, to an extent, scares off investors. And ideally, there was a slowdown in the real estate market, which directly impacted the manufacturers, especially cement manufacturers like your company. Yeah. How does this constant electioneering and heightened elections really affect your output as manufacturers, and especially the cement manufacturers?
I think elections all over the world create a little bit of uncertainty in terms of who will form the next government, or what the policies of the next government will be, how they will affect business environment. The less uncertainty about our policies, the better for the country. It should not matter who the politician is or which the political party, as long as we have a sense of the agenda of what these parties and the politicians represent. So our focus as business and private sector is to engage in politicians and say, these are the policies which will help the country to grow. As long as we can communicate that and engage with the politicians, I think we're on a good ground.
Maybe then the final and closing remarks from you in terms of manufacturing and the Big Four agenda.
What I would like to see from the Capital Markets Authority is promotion of mortgage-backed securities for housing, for real estate construction, for infrastructure. I think that is where we can really channel a lot of our private savings into a product that will allow us to build millions of housing. This is the best way to build housing and to develop our real estate structure and to achieve the President's Big Four agenda.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pradeep. Thank you. Have a great conversation as it's happening there. And of course, as we had earlier mentioned, the President is expected here today to launch the 5-year strategic plan for the Capital Markets Authority, which ideally, as it's stated here, 2018-2023 strategic plan outlines the authority's blueprint for the 5-year period commencing July 2018, and comes at a critical time when the domestic financial market is primed to rebound and experience greater activity and performance. The development of the new plan was substantially informed by extensive consultations, both internally and externally, locally and internationally, with the authority's board playing a key role in offering guidance towards the crystallization of our vision to be an innovative regulator of a robust and globally competitive capital markets. That is what the President is expected to launch today, and a number of activities really are happening here. My colleague Laban Cliff is in the hall really, and maybe we'll be speaking to him later to make to give us an understanding of the people who are there and what ideally are the conversations that are happening inside. But as I had mentioned, we'd be having a robust conversation right outside as things happen inside. And Jared Osoro is joining me now, who is the policy head of policy for the Kenya Bankers Association. And a lot of things have been happening around the Kenya banking industry. You'd remember the Cabinet of Industry, it's happened in 2016, and a lot of conversation are happening around credit to the SMEs, credit to manufacturing, credit to different sectors in the Kenyan economy. But generally, I think Gerard is here in his capacity as an economist. Gerard, maybe if you would want to make us understand. Welcome to the show, really. Make us understand, really, what brings you here today.
I think we are here because we are part of the conversation around how we can deepen the financial sector generally. And the capital markets are a very integral part of the financial infrastructure. So we are here essentially to see how the strategic plan that is being launched is going to fit in the broad aspiration of having a deep financial system that supports the economy's growth aspirations.
We've been talking about how we can deepen this financial sector for a while now. We've been having this conversation. And somebody, I think it's a report by the Kenya Bankers Association mentioning that almost, one Kenyan can be able to access banking services at the village level. You've been able to take access of these banks really to the lowest level in our Kenyan society in terms of maybe creating so many other outlets, even mobile banking, which is a big industry in Kenya really. What are you doing as Kenya Bankers Association to deepen the Kenyan financial sector?
I think you're right in your observation that the network of the banks and other financial market players has really gone to the grassroots level. I think that is really promoting what you can call access. Now the next level in making sure that this serves the households and the businesses at that level is to ensure that there's enhanced usage of some of those services. And that's where now there's a blend between technology and the traditional way of providing financial services in a manner that enhances the usage of those financial services and not necessarily access, which may not necessarily translate into true financial inclusion.
Maybe then you'd want to mention how, yes, there is access, but to an extent that people cannot be able to afford loans to do businesses at the lowest level. That's why a number of people, including the Kiambu Member of Parliament who first came up with the capping of rates in 2016, was arguing that we need to make these loans accessible to the people at the lowest level so that they can be able to do business at that level. What have you done as the banking sector in terms of maybe making these loans and making finance accessible and affordable to the lowest level?
We are very much aligned to the aspect of wanting to have finance accessible. That we are aligned. But if you prescribe remedies that curtail access while you're addressing the cost aspect, you'll probably be negating the strides that we've made insofar as financial inclusion is concerned. And what we've done as an industry and all the other stakeholders is to ensure that we have an holistic way of addressing all aspect of the cost of funding instead of looking at controlling the price without necessarily looking at how that price is determined. For instance, you look at the financial year 2018-2019 budget, there are a number of measures that have been spelled that are seeking to bring down the government fiscal deficit. If government borrowing is reduced, then we probably have to start seeing a situation where the banks and other financial players are now giving money to the private sector instead of the government.
Then again, Gerard, if you would want to mention in terms of maybe how, to an extent, there have been an argument back and forth, and I know you don't want to speak about it today, in terms of maybe the capping of rates and removal of this capping of rates. How has it affected making these loans accessible to the lowest level, really, and even to an extent has had, the capping of rates to an extent has had access of credit to the private sector and to households and SMEs? What are you doing really, or what conversations are you having as the banking association to really facilitate and make this credit accessible to the SMEs in a manner that really does not bring a lot of arguments in terms of maybe the pricing of these loans?
The first thing is to acknowledge that Kenya is the leader in Africa insofar as lending to SMEs is concerned. The gross portfolio that goes into SMEs is about 23%. Now, the other African countries, we are talking about less than 10%. So already we've made strides insofar as lending to SMEs is concerned. But there's an acknowledgement that to access and the cost of credit to SMEs must be looked in a manner that, you have the enhanced capacity of the SMEs themselves. And we have a program that is now building the capacity of SMEs so that now you de-risk them, so that when they go to access funding, they access that funding in a manner that is affordable. Because many of the SMEs are actually very informal. They lack the basic capacities in terms of even preparing bankable proposals. So when you enable them in terms of enhancing their capacity, you're in a way de-risking them and therefore enabling them to access funding more affordably.
Really interesting conversation, really. And then again, generally, let's speak about the state of economy in your position as an economist, really. You remember that we had election last year, and this prolonged electioneering period had in a big way the investment, that the flow of FDI and even LDI to the country. What can we do as a country to come up with a certain policy that is, to an extent, predictable, so that we avoid this uncertainty around our elections?
There's one thing that is actually working for this economy insofar as the political calendar is concerned. We know for sure that elections are held after every 5 years, and that's a given. The only challenge I see is where we have a very noisy political environment that investors look at and feel that they should hold on until the election period is over. That's why we saw a reversal of portfolio investment in the economy around the election time, but we are seeing that now being negated by the inflows that are coming in. And I think that is why you found that last year the economic performance was lower than it was over the previous 5 years. And I think now we are starting to see a sense of optimism coming through. But that sense of optimism must be underpinned by a predictable policy environment, a resurgence in credit to the private sector, and I think in many respects the maintenance of the momentum insofar as providing the requisite infrastructure that will be sufficient for people now to pump up their levels of investment and capacity utilization, because a number of investments basically have been operating at below capacity. So if you have an environment that is conducive, essentially what you're doing is that you're going to enable them build up the capacity in which they have and then seek to have additional capacity. Then further, we're likely to see FDI come in, and we want to see FDI come in a manner that is diversified, not necessarily FDI that's seeking to invest in the extractive industry and in the traditional sectors, but in other sectors, probably the service sector, the financial sector, and the manufacturing sector.
Maybe then we'd mention the president's Big Four agenda, really. And it has a lot of private sector contribution. They're saying how they want to have a public-private partnership in terms of maybe enabling this Big Four agenda of the president. And manufacturing, which is one of the biggest pillars of the Big Four agenda, is largely played by the private sector. To an extent, are you optimistic that the Big Four agenda would be achieved in President Uhuru Kenyatta's second term?
The big agenda is a very ambitious, the Big Four agenda is a very ambitious agenda. And I think the first year of this administration is basically laying the groundwork towards the accomplishment of the Big Four. So what needs to happen for the Big Four to be accomplished is really to make sure that the plans for implementation are well articulated, such that now the resource from the public sector and the private sector are really going to be complementing each other in a manner that will lead towards the realization of those Big Four. So having said that, I think they are very ambitious, they're in the right direction, but the accomplishment will depend on what kind of framework is laid out in the first year of implementation.
And then maybe we mention a regional perspective, really. You remember that a lot of activities are happening in terms of reforms within Ethiopia. Ethiopia has been growing at double digits for the past 10 years. There is a number of reforms that are happening in Uganda, in Tanzania. How does this, to an extent, threaten Kenya as one of the leading economies in the region?
Kenya indeed has been a leader insofar as the economy of the region is concerned. Over time, we are seeing other economies putting their houses in order in a manner that are seeking to compete with Kenya. But the fact is, when the regional players are also enhancing their capability and their economies, it plays well to Kenya, which has a bigger capacity in the sense that our markets are actually going to continue expanding. I know there are quite a number of Kenyan investors who are looking into the Ethiopian market, for instance, given that, there is huge potential there. So I think many of the investors in Kenya have a regional orientation insofar as their businesses are concerned. That's why we have, for instance, in the financial sector, a number of players really playing across the region. So it's really incumbent upon the investors in Kenya to look at the region as an opportunity, as opposed to looking at what's happening in other markets as a sense of competition.
As we wind up, really, I cannot end this conversation without asking you a question that almost is asked by every Kenyan out there. In terms of our public debt position, over 5 trillion shillings, are we able to sustain this at a time when we have ambitions to roll out so many other development projects, and at a time when we are continuously been servicing our loans to the extent of 60% of the things that have been raised by the taxes that have been raised by the Kenya Revenue Authority?
I think the scope for the economy to take much more debt than we have right now is very thin. And the reason being that we accumulated debt within a very short time, and the structure of the debt that we accumulated over that very short time has been of a short-term nature. That means that our obligation on a day-to-day basis or on a regular basis has increased substantially. So I think now, going forward, any investment that are going to be put forth by the public really must be considered to be financed by any other source other than debt, because the scope for financing debt is getting thinner by the day. And if we continue like this, we are going to move into a debt unsustainable levels, which will be very disastrous for the economy.
Lastly, the state of corruption and how it's hurting the economy.
Obviously, corruption hurts the economy. And I think the pronouncements that we've seen insofar as wanting to combat corruption is probably what gives us hope that, we are probably coming into a place where corruption is going to be a thing of the past. But I think we need to see how it goes, because it's still early days. We want to see how the pronouncements will translate into actual combating of corruption, which is really a constraint to economic progress.
Thank you very much, Jared, who is the head of policy and research at the Kenya Bankers Association, who actually really was giving us his perspective in terms of the state of the economy. A lot of activities happening here at the KICC grounds as the Capital Markets Authority prepares to launch their 5-year strategic plan. The president is expected here. A number of industry players, listed companies, and the private sector are represented here. And a lot of activities going in. As we had mentioned, our reporter Laban Cliff is inside. We might link up with him later. And we will definitely be having contribution from every part of the country, from the counties, and now we would be joined by our reporter Lois Wangoi, who is in Eldoret, to help us understand the state of the economy. Should be speaking to a financial analyst. Lois, if you can hear me, good morning. What is happening in Eldoret, and maybe you take over.
Thank you. In that same position of upstanding, shall we have the opening prayer? I'm told there's a CMA staff member who will give the opening prayer to please come right to the front for the same.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we come before you this morning with thanksgiving for the gift of life. We thank you for this function today. We thank you for our leadership. We pray for our president and his deputy and all the leaders as we start this day, Almighty Father, when we are launching this Capital Markets Authority strategic plan. We pray that you guide us, be with us, and that all the aspirations that we have in this plan shall come to pass. We pray this trusting and believing in your holy name. Amen.
One, two, 1, 2. on the 15th, 16th day of the month, and this budget starts from the implementation of the 2018-19 budget starts from July 1st. So we are barely half a month into the new financial year. So whatever is supposed to be spent in this financial year is probably not even spent. But you know, the Mwananchi, the level of excitement is probably what would say the only thing that you could say has an impact to spend the money that is allocated for this financial year.
Kenyans got tired with the expecting, yeah? As you say, you know, these analysts, they analyze it differently. But Kenyans on the ground, they know that, yes, the budget has been read, and there is this allocation for ABCD. Whatever we wanted, if it's not mentioned there, it goes. So they remain there as normal Kenyans. You know, Kenyans are used to. Budgets come and go, but we remain there. Those people who understand budgets, like my colleague here analyzing budgets and doing ABCD, that this money was put to this, you know, you find that there is like 800 billion that was allocated to pay debts. Yeah? Now, who will follow to know that if that money paid debts? No one. And okay, there are those who know who will follow up and say that this money used to pay debts.
But for Wanjiku, that's really...
But for Wanjiku, we do not know. Next year, we shall also be told there is another 900 billion that is being used to pay debts. We do not know whether those debts have been paid or not. Even if they bring it, they say that we did not get the money, we did not hit the target that was required. What happens? Wanjiku remains there. This budget thing, it is for the people up. It does not go down unless they have their own interpretation of analyzing. Yeah. The common Mwananchi really, he's there. He or she hears about budget reading. Here, this much has been allocated to medical care. But unless that amount is put into action, that we see, like referral, we see Kenyatta, there is a lot of money that has been allocated to Kenyatta. Now, how will we see that money?
Kenyatta Hospital.
Yeah, Kenyatta Hospital. If you go deep into the budget, there is specific amount of money that has been allocated to Kenyatta National Hospital for improvement, for medication, for ABCD. But unless we go down to say that, was this money really spent on Kenyatta? What did it improve in Kenyatta? Because last year, there was money which went there. This year, there is this money that has gone there. Is there any improvement?
So in essence, what you're saying, Mr. Kenga, is that even after the budget has been read, then there needs to be framework to ensure that indeed the money is allocated to specific projects or to specific parastatal bodies then goes into that, so that when Wanjiku, for instance, goes to Moi Teaching and Referral Hospital, they will be able to get medication there, and when they go to XX supermarket, then they'll be able to afford unga, a packet of unga.
That is exactly what I'm saying. You see, there is this project where the president launched it some years back ago, that there were this equipment in hospitals that were being leased, and they will be supplied to all hospitals, referral hospitals, in all the 47 counties. You see, if someone goes to Kenyatta National Hospital, if someone goes to referral hospital here in Eldoret, the person can go to the X-ray and see that this is a new machine that was put here.
And so it's functional.
And it is functioning. Not only a new machine, the machine is functioning, it is effective. So you can say, yes, we can see those things were leased and they're working. They came down to Mwananchi and the Mwananchi is benefiting. But now when you talk about 800 billion being used to pay debts, first of all, which debts? You know, 800 billion is more than even the budget of Kenya, of Uganda and Tanzania. But it's being used to pay debts. Next year, God willing, when we are here, you'll be told there is another 900 billion which is being used to pay debts. Now, can they tell us last year, the money they allocated to pay debts, which money went to which debts? And which debts are this anyway? Yeah.
Mr. Kiprotich, my colleague Gabriel Kujaka was speaking to, is currently at Eldoret Town, and we'll be linking up with him, and I'm sure Wananchi will be giving their input on the same. And I want to imagine what Advocate Akenga is saying may be the opinion of some of the residents here, and of course in the whole of the country. Where you sit as an economic analyst, of course we can say the budget is very good, there was this allocated to this, these will work for this. But really, is Wanjiku able to get value for their money through this particular budget, such that if person Y goes to Jengo for a day and he's paid 500 shillings, will he be able to afford healthcare, food, and even housing, education for his family? Is that reflective in this year's particular budget?
Well, if there is one challenge that Kenya has not been able to address in terms of in its budgeting, is the cost of living. The cost of living for the poor Mwananchi is still very high, and Kenyans are not able to afford everyday needs with the money that they have. So that is one of the challenges. But if you look at, for example, Eldoret, for example, one of the things that would interest them the most is on agriculture.
Okay.
And the national, the budget allocated some 3.4 billion.
Okay.
Sorry, 4.3 billion.
I will cut you short because we should be handing over to KICC, where more is continuing with matters business. Of course, we pick this conversation much later.
To be the premier choice and ultimately to be a part of Kenya's success in becoming an international financial center.
Let's appreciate the Capital Markets Authority for that milestone. To our viewers tuned in Kenya and around the world, welcome. This is Top in Business coming to you live from the Kenyatta International Convention Centre. My name is Laban Cliff. What you've just witnessed on your screens is basically a snapshot of to what the Capital Markets Authority is doing in aligning with the Big Four agenda, and exactly to the very detailed various facets that we'll be embarking on for the next 5 years. What you see there is an overall goal. Ideally, it will be kind of different, you know, when we talk about the overall government strategic plan and now to the corporate strategic plan. And there's an aspect about people. And later on, we'll be hearing from the CMA staff themselves into an initiative that they've just launched internally, which is called Uwezo Kipeo, which is actually a way we work and is a call to rally the various staff, of course, in the authority into achieving the vision. Something that is worth noting is moving towards regulatory excellence and maximum empowerment. So what I'm reminded of is that culture eats strategy for breakfast. So indeed, CMA is living up to this billing. So please, one more round of applause to CMA and the entire team that is working behind the scenes to deliver this vision. So ladies and gentlemen, just so that we can flow into the program, allow me to ask our various guests who I mentioned earlier. We are honored, just for the benefit of our viewers. Our chief guest today is Cabinet Secretary in the Ministry of Treasury, that's Henry Rotich. I'm going to ask him to please make his way right to the front. We're going to ask him to take the seat up front here. Together with the Chief Administrative Secretary, that's Nelson Gashuhe, who's also represented here. We have our CMA Chairman, that's James Ndegwa. We have a CEO in the Capital Markets Authority, that's Paul Muthaura. And we also have us to represent the board, that is. Allow me also to welcome CMA Director, that's Madam Christine Okoth, to also join us right at the front, together with Madam Rose Mambo, of course, representing CDSC, and last but not least, Jeff Odundo, representing the Securities Exchange. So, ladies and gentlemen, to come up on stage, and then we shall begin with the official process that will now lead up towards the official unveil, of course, which will be a highlight to be showcased today here. Thank you very much. And now, of course, to our guests, if you're following these proceedings on our social media platforms, please remember to tweet us with the hashtag #TopInBusiness. And also, we were live on NTV today, so please also follow the link on hashtag NTV today. And of course, we'll keep you abreast also with various deliberations that take place within this session, of course, out of this session as we proceed. So, sir, just to also give you an overview, ideally it will not be fair to only speak on the side of the CMA. It will be nice also to recognize the various other industry stakeholders who are represented here from various sectors. We talk about the Big Four, but again, it touches on various sectors. And at the risk of missing to mention any one of you, I'm just going to ask us to appreciate each and every one, chairman, CEO, directors represented in the house today. So please give yourselves a round of applause for making it here. And my job here is simple. I'm going to invite the chairman of the Capital Markets Authority to take it over from here. That's Mr. James Ndegwa to give his opening remarks. Over to you, sir.
Thank you. The Cabinet Secretary to the National Treasury, Mr. Henry Otich, Chief Administrative Secretary, National Treasury, Principal Secretaries present, board members and chief executives of the financial sector regulators present, board members and chief executive of the NSE, board members and the chief executive of the CDSC, chairpersons of our industry associations, chief executives and representatives of capital markets intermediaries, fellow board members, management and staff of the Capital Markets Authority, members of the Capital Markets Master Plan Implementation Committee, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, and after all that list, all protocols observed. Good morning and welcome to the launch of the Capital Markets Strategic Plan 2018-2023. On behalf of my colleagues on the board, the management and the staff of the Capital Markets Authority, I wish to thank all of you for setting aside the time today to be with us on this very important day in the life of the authority. I especially thank our guest of honor, the CS National Treasury, for his presence. Our guest of honor, the process of developing the strategic plan that shortly we shall be requesting you to launch commenced with a comprehensive analysis based on the achievements, learnings, experiences, and challenges of the just-ended plan 2013-2018. Following extensive participatory stakeholder engagement, the authority has reviewed and refocused its vision, its mission, and strategic objectives. The Capital Markets Authority's new vision is to be an innovative regulator of a robust and globally competitive capital market. The capital markets are very dynamic and with growing sophistication, especially in the technology space, and therefore it is incumbent on us to strive to support innovation within the industry while simultaneously embracing it ourselves at board, management, and staff levels at the CMA. The strategic plan envisages positioning Kenya's capital markets as the premier choice for investors and issuers through robust regulation, supportive innovation, and enhanced investor protection. This new mission is fundamentally focused on continuously improving the market experience of investors and issuers and intermediaries of all classes to fully leverage the opportunities provided by robust and dynamic capital markets. The plan commits resources to attracting both investors and issuers in equal measure and tailoring our oversight approach with an appreciation of their diversity and levels of sophistication. CS, the authority's strategic plan 2018-2023 is being launched at a highly appropriate time. The plan period coincides very substantially with the renewed term of the Jubilee government. In developing this plan, we have taken inspiration from the Big Four agenda of manufacturing, housing, healthcare, and food security. It is clear to us that Kenya's capital markets can and must play a key enabling role in delivering the Big Four agenda, and the range of initiatives to be pursued in this regard are clearly spelled out in the strategic plan. Our guest of honor, for 4 years in a row, 2015, 2016, 2017, and I'm delighted to say, just last week, the authority has been voted the most innovative capital markets regulator in Africa. We are therefore confident that we are not being overly ambitious in projecting to transform Kenya, in partnership with our stakeholders here present, from being a frontier market to an emerging market by 2023. In developing this strategic plan, we were encouraged by benchmarking assessments conducted against both emerging and developed markets, which revealed that the CMA is at par with our leading counterparts in terms of enforcement capacity, as well as the quality of our legal and regulatory framework. In speaking about the CMA's capacity to implement this plan, it is important that I emphasize the authority has embedded a culture of regulatory excellence, which has also seen it, a state corporation, emerge among the best companies to work for in East Africa. Coming as I do from the private sector, I must say that in the time it's been my honor to chair the board of the CMA, I have been tremendously impressed at the professionalism and commitment of the authority's management and staff, and see as they are truly exemplary public servants. And since I'm blowing our trumpet, I must also note that the CMA has consistently emerged among the top performers in each of the cycles of performance contracting, evidencing our commitment and capacity to support national priorities. Now, talking about national priorities, I want to take this opportunity to highly commend His Excellency the President for what I call the national crusade to restore integrity at the heart of the public service in Kenya. This is a war in which failure is not an option if Kenya is to fully realize its true and immense potential. And these are the values we must hold dear as a society and as a people. Our guest of honor, I assure you that inasmuch as the authority appreciates the recognition it has received for its innovation and development role, it also takes its regulatory role, and in particular, the promotion and protection of investors' interests equally seriously. The CMA has, in recent years, introduced codes on enhanced corporate governance and stewardship. And generally in our approach, we encourage that proper procedure and practice is followed. However, where it is not, we take regulatory action. And because it is topical, allow me to assure everyone that the authority's enforcement action is always undertaken in a strictly objective and impartial manner. Now, generally, the authority's initiatives and actions in this regard are all intended to ensure good and proper conduct in Kenya's capital markets, and in doing so, I think we do our part in supporting the President's insistence on integrity wholeheartedly. Cabinet Secretary, while we reiterate our commitment to ensuring that the CMA's performance targets are met in the strategic objectives highlighted, we seek your support, as well as that of the State Corporations Advisory Committee, SCAC, to grant the authority the necessary autonomy to be able to effectively execute our statutory responsibilities. Enhanced autonomy would allow us to devote optimal resources to the successful implementation of the strategic plan, and by extension, the realization of the Big Four agenda and Vision 2030. CS, you know very well that a well-developed and properly functioning financial market has a central role to play in achieving Kenya's target of transforming itself into a newly industrialized upper middle income country by both generating wealth and safeguarding it. The board and management of the Capital Markets Authority commit to effectively guide the implementation of this new strategic plan by actively engaging relevant stakeholders to continuously align it with Kenya Vision 2030, the Big Four agenda, and other national development policies. Ladies and gentlemen, this plan recognizes the invaluable strategic support and influence that will be necessary from our key domestic and international partners for its successful implementation. These partners include the Executive Office of the Presidency, the National Treasury and Planning, Kenya Revenue Authority, the financial sector regulators, international development partners, global financial sector standard setters, our domestic market, and international stakeholders, among others, many of whom are very well represented here today. We therefore look forward to all of your continued and deeper collaboration with the authority to ensure that the Capital Markets Authority Strategic Plan 2018-2023 succeeds, not as an end in itself, but for the benefit of the capital markets, the economy, and most importantly, the people of Kenya. Now, as I conclude, I would like to take this opportunity to register my appreciation to all the various parties, stakeholders, and indeed the CMA team for their concerted efforts making this launch possible and for your kind audience. And with those few remarks, it is now my pleasure and honor to invite the Cabinet Secretary, National Treasury and Planning, Mr. Henry Otich, to make his remarks and officially launch the Capital Markets Authority's Strategic Plan 2018-2023. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chair. Chief Administrative Secretary and Principal Secretaries who are present here today, Chairman, Board members, Chief Executive of the Capital Markets Authority, all the leadership of the financial sector, regulators and industry players, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's almost still morning. Very good. First, let me say that as you all are aware, His Excellency the President was to be with us today to launch this strategic plan, but due to very many commitments that came up, he's asked me to represent him in this launch. Obviously, I was also going to be there, so I want to say that accept the apologies of His Excellency the President. He would definitely have liked to be with you for this very important occasion. Nonetheless, let me start by saying that it's really a great pleasure to be with you today during this launch of the Capital Markets Strategic Plan. I know you've already gone through a few, and we have just listened to very elaborate and well done plan that the CMA has developed, and I would really want to congratulate them for that good work. Let me at the onset also take this opportunity to thank you, stakeholders, for showing solidarity with the CMA and by turning in large numbers this morning. As you all know, our financial sector is recognized globally as a very vibrant sector. Our financial sector has been expanding locally and across the sub-Saharan region, with innovations driving financial inclusion. The rate of adoption of digital financing in Kenya is considered among the highest in Africa. Kenya is now recognized as a world leader in mobile money technology, reaping the benefits that come along with it. Our capital markets has the largest market capitalization in the East African region, with a host of products and innovation. Our Vision 2030, as you all know, identifies financial sector as one of the priority sectors to enable achievements of the annual economic growth of at least 10%. This will be achieved through creation of a vibrant and globally competitive financial sector that will promote high levels of savings to finance Kenya's investments need. Achieving a growth rate of 10% will help Kenya make a significant progress in attainment of sustainable development goals. Achievement of this high level of economic growth target requires funding of the key Vision 2030 projects. In this respect, the sector is expected to mobilize financial resources and increase investments from both domestic and international sources. We require about investment level of over 30% of GDP and savings rates of over 25% of GDP to sustain just a growth rate of 10% that we are talking about. So we are still way below that, but we look forward by 2030, we should have had investment levels of over 30% of GDP. Currently, I think we are in around 23, 24, thereabout. Of course, as we develop, capital markets plays a bigger role even than the banking sector. At the moment, the banking sector assets contribute over 75% of financing in Kenya, while capital markets and others just contribute the remainder. As we develop, as we become an emerging market, we should be seeing equity and capital markets assets playing a more significant role in funding businesses and enterprises. This is what happens in most of the countries where capital markets assets are larger than bank loans in financing investments. So we should be seeing move towards that direction, and we should be seeing an increasing role of capital markets in funding our businesses as we continue to achieve our Vision 2030. So I urge the capital markets to aggressively work on these aspects until the share of capital assets in funding business requirements. I don't mean that the banking sector will be irrelevant, but obviously they will continue to play a bigger role as we move forward. To enable the sector play its role, the government has been undertaking various policy measures and reforms geared towards enhancing financial system stability, improving efficiency, and expanding financial access in line with the targets set out in Vision 2030 and the third medium-term plan. First, with regard to the stability, we have been taking steps, as you have seen, to strengthen the regulatory framework through revisions to our legislations. Also regulations and guidelines alongside steps to strengthen financial oversights and enforcement. Strong progress was made in adopting risk-based supervision across all the regulators. In addition, we have strengthened our anti-money laundering framework. Further, the Nairobi International Financial Centre Authority was established in 2014 through an executive order and an interim secretariat of NIFCA established at the National Treasury. The Nairobi International Financial Centre will be critical to attracting international capital into the Kenyan market. We will be shortly appointing the board and interim management that will spearhead the finalization of the technical and operational aspects in readiness for the launch of Nairobi International Financial Centre later this year. Second, on the issues of efficiency, we have addressed quite a number by implementing in the banking sector recommendations of the Committee on Enhancing Private Sector Credit and Mortgage Financing, which I constituted in 2014. We have implemented measures to improve transparency and competition, and we are now working on consumer protection issues in the financial sector. The Movable Property Security Rights Act 2017 is in place, and lenders can now provide credit using movable properties as collateral. In addition, we are finalizing the establishment of the Kenya Mortgage Refinance Company, which will make it easier for banks to access long-term finance for home loans. The secondary trading of this mortgage asset class will also follow shortly. Kenya has made tremendous progress in expanding financial access and is now considered a global role model. The FinAccess survey of 2016 showed that the proportion of the adult population using formal financial services rose to 75.3%, up from 66.7% in 2013. These achievements have been hinged on the enabling regulatory environment coupled with the adoption of innovative technologies to expand access. Ladies and gentlemen, despite these achievements, we should not be complacent. As a matter of fact, now is the time to build on progress made along the three pillars of stability, efficiency, and access. I challenge all the financial sector players present, and in particular the capital markets players, to work on new modalities and reforms that will strengthen financial stability, improve financial efficiency, and expand access to financial services. Therefore, in evaluating performance and success in this sector, each of the financial sector players ought to review their contribution around the three pillars. I believe, and I've seen in the strategic plan that we are launching today, we are satisfying these critical benchmarks. So as players in the financial sector, we need to reflect on really critical issues around the three pillars I've just mentioned. For example, have we fully really strengthened the stability of the financial sector, and in particular capital markets? Are our markets well regulated? I must say there is really a lot of work has been done. Significant progress has been achieved, but there are still some various market failures that require continued regulatory attention. On access, issue is, are capital market products accessible to common mwananchi in Kenya? Are they able to trade in capital markets? I must say, a lot of work has been achieved. We witnessed the introduction of new products and innovation in the capital markets. But there is still room for more innovation. I believe the strategic plan has been designed in a way to address these concerns. Ladies and gentlemen, given this context, today marks a very important occasion as our capital markets fraternity comes together to support the implementation of the strategic plan of the Capital Markets Authority, detailing the role that our market regulator will play within the markets over the next 5 years. The plan we are launching today serves as a clear commitment of just one, but nonetheless a critical national institution in executing its role to position Kenya as the heart of the African capital market financing and investment. In addition, the strategic plan is in line with the 10-year capital market master plan that we launched some time back. I wish to laud the Capital Markets Authority for consciously aligning its strategic directions with our national development agenda as elaborated in our third medium-term plan of our Vision 2030 and Sustainable Development Goals. This will ensure that Kenya's capital markets have their desired impact in supporting economic development and empowerment. In particular, we're very pleased to note that the strategic plan has been aligned to the government's Big Four agenda. Without doubt, the plan as clearly and specifically demonstrated how the capital markets are going to support food security, affordable housing, manufacturing, and universal healthcare. I urge other public and private sector entities in the country to follow the lead of the board and management of the Capital Market Authority in making a cautious and proactive decision to align the strategic plan with the Big Four agenda. Given the huge financial outlay of development projects, and in particular those of the Big Four agenda, there is need to boost domestic and foreign investment. The level of new investment remains limited, with only 66 companies listed on the Nairobi Securities Exchange. To encourage new listing, and particularly by local firms at the Nairobi Securities Exchange, I urge the Capital Markets Authority to review its regulatory and legal framework to encourage new listing. This will enhance liquidity at the capital markets and make our stock exchange vibrant. Ladies and gentlemen, in order to enhance the role of the capital markets of providing long-term funding critical to economic transformation, it is important that we scale up reforms that will improve corporate governance, enhance uptake of wide range of capital markets products and services, combat money laundering and terrorism financing, and encourage uptake of technology innovation. First, on corporate governance, I welcome the efforts by the CMA in consultation with its stakeholders in establishing a corporate governance code for issuers of securities and implementing a stewardship code for institutional investors. This will guide the industry on sound corporate governance practices and ensure that institutional investors take up a proactive role in promoting sound governance in listed companies in Kenya. However, to reap the full benefits of the sound corporate governance, it is vital that CMA strengthen enforcement of the guidelines to curb cases where listed companies take advantage of any loopholes in the guidelines. Second, on the money laundering and terrorism financing, allow the joint efforts of the CMA in consultation with the Financial Reporting Center and other relevant organs of government to issue guidelines to combat money laundering and the financing of terrorism for capital markets intermediaries. Money laundering has devastating economic and security and social consequences. It diminishes government's tax revenue and therefore directly and indirectly harms honest taxpayers. Indeed, Kenya cannot afford to have its reputation and financial institutions tarnished by associations with money laundering, especially in today's global economy. In my budget statement that I delivered last month, I proposed amendments to the Proceeds of Crime and Anti-Money Laundering Act and Capital Markets Act in order to curtail money laundering and terrorism financing and address key capital markets malpractices, including corporate governance breaches, embezzlement of investors' funds, front-running, provision of misleading information, and effective management of investor compensation fund. I believe that your strategic plan will benefit from these innovative measures. Third, while capital markets players have introduced new products and services, the available range of products and innovation within the Kenyan capital markets is still low by international standards. I therefore urge CMA and other capital market players to go the extra mile and introduce other products and innovation. Availing these products and innovation will incentivize increased participation in the capital markets. On technology side, while Kenya still enjoys its stature as a hub of innovation, the country's capital markets have suboptimally utilized the opportunity presented by fintech innovation to push capital markets activity to the next level by broadening products and service offering, deepening market participation and liquidity, and driving transformative economic development. It is widely anticipated that fintech will be one of the key hallmarks of competition between Kenya and other jurisdictions globally in terms of new listing, financial access, and savings level. In walking this path, we, however, cannot detach fintech opportunities from cybersecurity threats, as the two are intertwined. Without robust cyber defense mechanism, the benefits of fintech might be lost. This therefore calls for preparedness in several areas, including cyber governance, cyber security partnership, robust infrastructure, and the implementation of advanced cyber security technologies. I therefore urge the CMA to implement explicit standards on cyber resilience owing to the high reliance on technology in the securities and derivatives markets, and the task of our industry to implement the same fully. In conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to re-emphasize that the existence of the sound financial sector, and in particular the capital markets, is crucial in supporting economic development and serves as an engine of growth in our own right. Therefore, we must strive towards strengthening the resilience of the capital markets sector in order to be able to tackle and surmount risks and challenges in the future. I also wish to reaffirm the government's commitment to ensuring that the capital markets are well positioned to support national economic growth and to meet future challenges from regional competition and globalization of Kenya's position, as Kenya positions itself to be a competitive international financial center. So once again, let me take this opportunity to congratulate the Board of the Capital Markets Authority, management and staff, and the entire capital markets fraternity for the support leading to the launch of this capital market strategic plan. Well done for the job. So it's one thing to launch a strategic plan. It's another thing to implement. So I'm looking forward for a robust implementation. I saw you have a very clear implementation plan. And I want to assure you that the National Treasury and Planning will support you as you walk the journey of implementation. With those few remarks, it's now my pleasure, I don't know whether there is a ceremony, but it's now my pleasure to formally launch the Capital Markets Authority Strategic Plan for the period 2018 to 2023. Asanteni sana. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And one more round of applause, please, to our chief guest. Yes, there's a ceremony, and you're well part of it. And I'm going to give you direction into how we're going to jump in and witness this climax, which is the launch of a CMA strategic plan. So at this point, I'm going to ask our good choir out there, that's the CMA choir, to please take the stage. You're going to be setting up and getting ready to tell us how yourselves and the entire staff are actually going to implement this, because we keep mentioning about the people element. Again, I'm going to ask, as the choir is getting set up, sir, just so you know, by the way, this is the first digital launch, strategic plan digital launch that we're witnessing. So, of course, the bedrock being technology. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think to this milestone, let's appreciate CMA for leading the way. So, should we come to you, your organizations, we expect nothing less. So, I'm going to ask us to please, in the spirit of being digital, please have your phones on, and hope your Twitter pages are on also. We're going to move with the hashtag CMA Strategic Launch. That's for 2018-2023. So, shall we all please get our phones out kindly? You don't want to miss the moment on stage. After which, I'm going to ask my colleagues in the media team. Of course, we need this captured on the front pages of the Business Daily and a lot more. I see Diana is well positioned. So we're going to use this area right at the front for this activity. And because of the fireworks and all the frenzy that we witnessed, I'm going to ask my sign language interpreters for your health and safety, Raphael and Berecha, please, just at this point, if you could kindly just take your seats just right at the front, really briefly, as we get into the launch. So, shall we all let's give them a round of applause, brother. They've been doing an amazing job right here at the front. Thank you. So, sir, at this point, it's over to you, yourself, and our chair, James and Paul, please, if you could lead our chief guest right to the front here by the cocktail table. Right? Sure. I think Jeff and the team, you can just join in also. Yes, please. Jeff Rose, please come down. Kristen. We're going to position. And shall we all please be on standby, as I said, with our phones and also ready to tweet and share. I should mention that we want to do this in an orderly fashion. So I'm going to ask us all also to give them a countdown. So in just about now, and I stand guided by my producer, Debbie, if we shall begin. All right? Great. So ladies and gentlemen, are you ready for the launch of CMA's strategic plan for the next 5 years? Awesome. So let's give them a countdown in 3, 2, okay, wait a minute. I'm not counting alone. Let's all go. All right, let's go. 3, 2, 1. Let's appreciate our Honorable CASZ presses the button marking the official launch of the Capital Markets Authority's blueprint for the next 5 years. And there's an infographic right up on stage. Ladies and gentlemen, please, the launch of the Capital Markets Authority's strategic plan for the next 5 years. Let's give them a round of applause to the entire team that has made this possible. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. And to also signify this handover, I'm going to just hand over. This is the popular version for those of you who don't have your gadgets in place. So I'm going to hand it over to Paul to present to you, and we're going to have a brief photo session. So that's a popular version of the strategic plan handed over by CMA to government, and of course with the challenge of ensuring that we can live up to it and push it up towards implementation. Ladies and gentlemen, one One more time, please. One more round of applause to this milestone. All right, as they still continue to enjoy the popular version, I'm told we have to replay the video. For some of you who want to really get the gist of it. So we have our audio levels up now. Ladies and gentlemen, your attention to the screen. That's more reason to stay up and stay with us for lunch, because we want to make sure that you can actually get a quick view of this, and we'll have it displayed on the screen. But remember, I mentioned about the people element, and I mentioned about how we really need to make sure that we can actually have the people drive this agenda. So, to the CMA choir, I think you have a surprise for us into how we can actually live up to this. So, present to us the Uwezo Kipeo, which is actually your way of how you work in achieving this vision. Over to you.
Habari gani
Thank you. Thank you to the CMA choir, and all the best in your implementation strides. We appreciate. Ladies and gentlemen, we've come to the end of this program, and allow me to thank the CS for making time to be here. Of course, please pass our regards to His Excellency the President, also for spearheading and driving the Big Four agenda, even as corporations such as CMA have led the way in living up to this. Thank you to all our guests right up at the front. I should mention the board of CMA. I should mention to you, the industry players who are also partners with CMA in helping it achieve this vision. So ladies and gentlemen, just to give you direction for the next bit of the program, we're going to have a chief guest walk right to the staircase, where he will be led by the team right at the front, and our colleagues in the media also will have a chance to interact with them right outside, just by the staircase. For us, we also invited to lunch, thanks to CMA, and of course the networking session continues. So please don't feel in a rush to leave. Stay on at KICC, and of course let the networking session continue and see how you're going to plug in and align. To our viewers who are tuned to us from home, and of course from various places around the world, thank you for tuning in to Top in Business. We'll be coming to you live from the Kenyatta International Convention Centre. It's at this very location where we'll be bringing to you the 1 p.m. news shortly, of course with a highlight of what has transpired earlier on today, courtesy of this launch. My name is Laban Cliff. I want to bid you at home goodbye, and also the guests right at the front. So I think we'll all have to appreciate everyone who's tuned in and who will be following these proceedings on social media and on television. For one more round of applause, that will mark the end. So let's appreciate ourselves for being here and making time. Honorable CS, asante sana. It's over to you, and the team now will guide you out. Thank you.